And so I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Shalom Staub. I'm the director of the UCLA Center for Community Engagement. And it gives me a lot of pleasure to introduce this, this session. I had the pleasure of meeting Tom at a presentation in Johannesburg, along with the chancellor and a number of other UCLA researchers in Africa back in January, pre-pandemic. And what I was so impressed by was the way that the work that Tom articulated, and the work of the staff and the work of the community collaboration really represented to me a pinnacle of community engagement. And as the Center for Community Engagement has embarked on this pedagogy series, I thought what an opportunity it would be to connect the work happening in the Congo Basin with community engaged work happening here in LA, and to provide for an exchange of views and best practices and underlying principles. And so it was in that spirit that I approached Tom to organize this session, and I'm delighted that Virginia and Kevin have joined Tom. So Tom, if you would then take it away, introduce yourself, your colleagues, introduce yourselves more fully, and I'm looking forward to this opportunity to learn from you.
Okay, well, thank you. So my name is Tom Smith, and I'm a professor in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology, and also the Institute of the Environment. And for the last 6 years, I've been co-director of the Congo Basin Institute. So today, I'm an evolutionary biologist by training, conservation biologist, but I've been working in the Congo Basin for over 30 years, and with many different communities, and we're going to be sharing some of that today. So why don't we go to Kevin next?
Hi, my name is Kevin Jabo. I am the Africa Director for this Congo Basin Institute, and so I'm also a faculty at the IUES. I've been working in this region for the last 20 years.
And Virginia.
Hi, Virginia Zonbecker. I'm the Associate Director for the Congo Basin Institute, and I'm a lawyer with a science background. So I'm particularly interested in seeing how science is applied to policy and implementation, which I think makes it very interesting to be talking about community engagement and integrating students into those activities.
Great. Should I get started?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, everyone, apologies for the reverse screen issue, but if you rather not listen to me, you can just turn off, you can just go on mute and read my notes. But anyway, we couldn't get this quite sorted out. But let me take you to one of the most special places on Earth, a place that a lot of people can't locate on a map, but all of us depend on, that our future depends on, and that's, well, let's see now. That's the Congo Basin, about 1.4 million square miles in Central Africa. And it's an extraordinary place. There's really no place like it on Earth for biodiversity. This is a russet-eared guinan, a rare monkey that occurs there.
Tom, the slides aren't moving for us. So whichever screen we're viewing,
really?
It's
Okay.
staying the same way. So you could take whatever screen we're viewing, you could put it in that presentation mode on the lower right-hand side, and then we wouldn't see your notes anymore, but you'll have to move both at the same time.
Are you seeing this move?
Nope.
Are you seeing anything move? Oh man, it's moving on my computer. Huh.
Okay, now we're seeing one that looks like now we're seeing you move. So you can just go from here.
So I can go from here. Are you seeing full screen, or what are you seeing?
We're seeing the notes and everything.
Okay, but I can click through. Okay. All right. So the Congo Basin, 1.4 million square miles in Central Africa. It's an extraordinary place. There's really no place like it on the planet for biodiversity. In the Congo Basin, you really feel like you're shrouded in a cloak of timelessness, and as if things never change. But in fact, a lot has changed. in the last 35 years. The first scramble for Africa occurred between 1881 and 1914 and involved basically the scramble by European powers that invaded, occupied, and annexed African territory to secure natural resources for Imperial Europe. This famous 1982 cartoon shows British colonist Cecil Rhodes as a giant standing over Africa, taking its full measure. Today, what we're seeing is essentially a second scramble for Africa, and this is being spearheaded by China. And you may have heard of the One Belt Road, which extends across Asia and in Europe and Africa. And we're seeing this tremendous increase in development, and in the way of deep water ports, massive development of Africa's natural resources, such as logging and mineral development. And so this is creating a lot of stress on the society of Africa in general, because it's many of the countries are, finding themselves in essentially a debt trap in many cases. Africa is also one of the regions that is going to be most affected by climate change. About 40% of its plants and animals are at risk of extinction if the average rise in mean temperatures exceeds 3 degrees C, which is almost a certainty. And so the question really becomes, where can we find answers to these challenges facing Central Africa? I see tremendous opportunities in Africa, and I think but unfortunately, much of the world, I think, over time has failed it. For the past 35 years, we've seen NGOs and universities oftentimes parachuting in, doing a project for a few years, and then leaving, and everything kind of going back to whatever the baseline was. So, what can we do to improve this situation? How can we build a scientific infrastructure that and more intellectual capital and policy to solve many of Africa's challenges? If we look at it from the standpoint of what's been happening, is that we have this incredible brain drain in Africa. If you look at Cameroon, for example, about 20% of the folks that go overseas for higher degrees, only about 20% come back. There are 700 universities serving 1.2 billion. It has the lowest R&D rates per GDP. And if you look at the most prestigious journals, the 80 most prestigious journals, only about 0.2% of the authors are from the Congo Basin. 44% of Africa is population is under the age of 15. And if you think about what Africa is going to look like in 2035, there'll be more people entering the workforce in 2035 than the rest of the world combined. And that pattern is going to sustain itself until the end of the century. We've got 4 out of 10 people on the planet will be African. So really we have this perfect storm of overwhelming need for expertise and limited supply. So what does Africa need to counter this storm and make solutions real? We need scientists and scholars staying at home, nurtured and supported. We need to be working across disciplines with policymakers. And it's essential that we also preserve indigenous and local knowledge and build partnerships with local communities so they are not left behind. So how do we do all of this? And well, I know we can, because we're already doing it. And that is that we created 6 years ago this Congo Basin Institute. It's the first foreign affiliate at UCLA in its 100-year history. And it's a base for research, education, partnerships, and community engagement. CBI is a new research network. It's focused around environmental sustainability, food and water security, human health, conservation, and climate change mitigation. It's also permanent. So rather than building an institute and putting it in Paris or New York, we're putting it in Africa to assist Africans. And so we are creating a green campus, working with design firms such as Gensler to create this green space that that uses local materials that people can use and is energy efficient. So rather than buildings with, concrete block buildings with AC running 24/7, you have this wonderful opportunity to rethink about how we can design a green campus. CBI also has is a growing number of field stations where people can do research, and we can also use in classes. This is one of the field stations in the Jaw Reserve in central Cameroon, where we can teach classes from various universities. We also use it for a lot of the community programs we have and the School of Indigenous Knowledge that I'll talk about in a moment. The main campus also has a really nice distance learning facility that we're building out, so we can create kind of a turnkey operation, so we can teach classes in Africa in the same time zones. We don't have to be overseas, although we have that capability. And so right now we're working in Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Democratic Republic of Congo. We have new projects starting up in Rwanda and the Central African Republic. And the idea is to ultimately link all of these areas in a place where we're working with this distance learning capacity. One thing about my work in Central Africa is that it goes back a long time. I went over to Africa in 1983 to do my dissertation work and started working with communities early on. I discovered very quickly that if there was any hope to do my research and really achieve anything, I needed to be working with the communities. And so that journey started then. This is a photograph of actually from 1993 of myself in the middle here, surrounded by two graduate students in the back, and then BACA researchers and colleagues who we've been working with now for over 30 years. And that has spawned an opportunity to really develop programs around Indigenous groups and Indigenous communities, and incorporate them into our classes and so forth. Now, this may be a little tricky. I'm going to try to run a video. See if you can hear this. Let me know if you can. Can you hear that?
No.
No, you can't hear it?
We can see it, not hear it.
Okay. That's a bummer. Let me see if I can just. Let's see if you can hear this. Can you hear that?
No.
No.
Tom, I could share out the link to the video with Shalom, and maybe he could circulate it after the talk.
Yeah, why don't you do that? It's a wonderful video by, I'll just mention it. It's a wonderful video by a UCLA student who spent a field season, a field course working in the Jaw Reserve, working with the professors of the forest, which are BACA that we work with, who we've been working with as researchers for many years. This is another thing that we've been involved in is recently in the last couple of years, we started a new school for Indigenous and local knowledge. And this has been very exciting. It's directed by Roxanne Bose, who's shown here holding a picture of an aardvark. And you can just see the excitement in the kids' eyes here as she describes the life history and of these animals, and has developed a whole curriculum that is preserving local knowledge. And this is so important because as indigenous groups become marginalized and move towards roads, they're losing much of their knowledge of the forest. And so what Roxanne has done is to come in and develop these curriculum materials, and now we're expanding this to actually develop entire courses for not only Baka children, but also Africans from all groups. And so it's a wonderful program that's been developing. This just shows you here, here she is working with some professors of the forest. These are senior Baka that we've developed these curriculum with. And she's doing this particular course at one of our field sites, where she brings children in from various villages from the Baka community to spend a few weeks in the forest with the senior Baka to begin to kind of reestablish a lot of the local knowledge. We recently also got a grant from the Ambassadors Fund to develop a museum and an archival system so the Baka can maintain this knowledge and update it as need be. Some of the other things we're doing at the Congo Basin Institute is working with local researchers. We had a 5-year, $5 million NSF grant where we brought in groups from multiple countries, Gabon, Equatorial, and Guinea and Cameroon, to work on trying to understand how we can preserve biodiversity under climate change. And so this is a long project, but I can't get into the details of it. We don't have time for that, but I wanted to just mention how the fact that we were able to work across countries facilitated tremendous collaborations that are still ongoing. This is a photograph of Professor Max Farrow, who's a professor at Equatorial Guinea, and Gerard Tassi on the right in the white shirt. And they are both, Gerard is a graduate student in Cameroon. But what's remarkable about this photograph is that these two guys are from different countries. And in Africa, the countries tend to be very siloed and there isn't a lot of collaboration across borders, at least in Central Africa. And so here, because of these programs we were able to develop, they are now collaborating, and that's is wonderful. Some of the other things that the Congo Basin Institute does, it's more or less one-stop shopping for international researchers, and who we help get research permits, we help them with logistics, and most importantly, we put them in touch with local researchers so they can develop research programs. And this is a photograph of Eric Fokum, who's a professor at the University of Buea. I've known Eric for over a decade. When I first met him, he had done a PhD at the University of Texas. He had done really wonderful work. He could have stayed in Europe or the US, but he wanted to come back and teach at the University of Buea. And when I met him, he was very poorly funded. He had a lab with mostly broken equipment, and he had one graduate student. And at the time he said, you know, Tom, I don't know if I can really do this. I just don't have the resources to stay. And luckily, because of CBI and the international researchers we bring in, Eric now has 6 collaborative grants and funds 9 graduate students. I should say 14 graduate students, 9 of whom are women. So by building this capacity in country and supporting local researchers, we can see that you know, the best and the brightest can stay and contribute. So some of the other community projects we've been involved in, this is a quite important one, is the Ebony Project that was begun in 2016 and financed by Bob Taylor at Taylor Guitars. Bob's interests grew out of basically he is exporting ebony for making guitars, but was very interested in rainforest restoration and how we could, plant ebony and also create an opportunity for increasing livelihoods in communities. Our interest was obviously livelihoods for communities, but also our interest was to work on ways of regreening the rainforest, essentially doing rainforest restoration. Ebony, as you know, is a very important tone wood, uniquely suited for fingerboards on guitars, but also other instruments and piano keys. So the way the project works is we're working with local communities where we created nurseries around one of the largest biosphere reserves in Central Africa. And we're planting ebony, working with the communities, and also native fruit trees. And what this does is it provides income for local people through planting of ebony, which they own, and Taylor Guitar actually supports them to grow the trees for a number of years. But also the fruit trees deliver really a very valuable cash crop very quickly. And so they have this double source of income, short-term being the fruit trees and long-term being the ebony. And this project has just taken off. I mean, we have people banging on the door who want to support it because it's so successful and the local communities really enjoy it. The people are planting the trees. They are getting benefit from the fruit trees and also the ebony. And it's a way for really very community all the community participates. So here's some kids taking trees into the forest. And what we're doing now is to develop bringing in other tree species with the goal of actually developing rainforest restoration approaches, which these local communities participate in. And they want to see the forest return, and that provides all these important ecological services, ecosystem services such as water and a better environment to live in. So one of the things that we've done with this project is to incorporate UCLA students in this project. So we've had UCLA IOES senior practicum students who've come over to do projects working with the local communities. And so this is a year-long capstone project that they do. And they come to Cameroon for about 3 weeks during spring break. But what's happened over time is that many of the students have gotten very excited about the project and have come back and have worked with the communities over longer periods for several months to even more. Little bit on CBI and where it's going. What we're doing is very much scalable. And that's because IITA has 17 stations, research stations across Africa. It's been there for 50 years. It's an institute that was focused on food security by Rockefeller and the Ford Foundation, but now you find stations across Europe. So we already have CBI projects in about 6 countries right now. So we're ever expanding. We also have a lot of partners. One of the things we're trying to do is not create a UCLA silo in Africa. We're trying to bring on other universities and NGOs to collaborate and work with us. So all of our collaborators have their name on the masthead and can participate. We have 3 UCs now, UCLA, Davis, and Riverside. One of the more recent institutions to join was Cornell University. One of the things I just wanted to mention is that I think there's a lot of potential here for collaborative work with other efforts at UCLA, such as the LA Grand Challenge. If you look at sub-Saharan Africa, it's one of the fastest growing regions in the world for urban areas. And they're currently, the population is growing very fast. There's a lot of movement towards these large urban areas. And so, I think we should be, in as much as we can, be leveraging this wonderful project we have right in LA to see how we can translate some of this to Africa and vice versa. And so we're starting to work with some of the folks at the LA Grand Challenge, Narit Katz and Cassandra Browser. We were hoping to bring them over last summer for some workshops, but that didn't happen because of COVID. But I'm excited that we can start moving in this direction to build these linkages, which I think would be wonderful. Just to finish up, Africa has tremendous challenges there, but and the second Scramble is on, but at the same time, I think we have to be thinking innovatively about new approaches, and we absolutely can't turn our back on Africa. We need to be fully engaged, and because I think Africa is in all of our future. It's the only way forward is to put Africans at the center of African solutions. And the second Scramble is on, but I think with UCLA helping to lead the way, and I think we can make it to a future that's about African sustainability. So that's pretty much my talk. I'm sorry you didn't get to see the wonderful video, but we'll send it around. It's just it's evocative of the wonderful opportunities for students and working with communities, and that's what the video was about. So thanks.
So Tom, can I follow up with a couple of thoughts? I think maybe, Shalom, is it okay to transition into a bit of a discussion with Kevin, Tom, and myself?
Yes, please.
Okay, fantastic. So I think a couple things are maybe worth underscoring for folks who never known about our program before. One is that CBI is intended to be a campus-wide initiative. And so we've hosted students from life sciences, physical sciences, the business school, world arts and cultures. So we're really intended to be a campus-wide resource. And when I think about us, I think about infrastructure with a very broad definition. So, obviously there's the physical infrastructure of places to stay. And I think it's important that we have both infrastructure in Yaoundé, the capital, but we also, as Tom mentioned, have those field stations, which means we have infrastructure out in communities that are much more remote than the capital. But it's also the infrastructure of knowing the communities in those places, having a background working with them. Kevin in particular has an extraordinary knowledge of Cameroonian students and researchers who can participate in some of the projects that we bring students out to work on. And so I just wanted to make everybody aware that we are kind of a resource. And even if folks on this call, don't think that tropical African student classes are in their future, you should feel free to kind of share information about us with others who you think might be. I think to kind of speak, Shalom, a little bit more to the community engagement piece, there's another side to that coin of us being campus-wide, and that's that the energy that we've put into developing those relationships and creating those bonds and that trust in particular, with the rural communities outside of Yaoundé, it means that every time a group comes over and wants to be able to leverage those connections, we need to kind of make sure that those folks are coming in with a mindset and an approach that's in line with our ethos and how we've worked with those communities in the past. And so I wanted to kind of flag that. I don't know if any of you work in spaces where you're kind of sharing community programs with other instructors or with other researchers, But that's certainly something to keep in mind, and it's something we try to impress upon our students, that the way that they act and interact on their trips influences not just their trip, but the trips after them. So I thought that was a point I wanted to make. I also, it'd be really helpful. I think most of the folks on this call are a little bit new to me. If you have an opportunity to put into the chat just your name and what department you're from or what your role is, I think that would also really help in shaping some of our comments. Kevin, did you have initial thoughts you wanted to share? You're on mute.
Oh yeah, thank you very much, Virginia. Thank you, Tom, for that very interesting talk. I think it really summarizes the things that we've been doing and the vision we have for the region. So, and it's interesting to see that there are so many aspects, as Virginia just put it in. It is not just the life sciences or ecology of what we're interested in. It's really a campus-wide initiative. So we have people from African studies and anthropology trying to go, and there are just so many things we can ask and so many questions we want to address in the region. And one of the things which we also try as much as possible as we push this community engagement is to break down some of the stereotypes that we have, like people going to Africa and thinking, oh, I'm going to the Baka, so they're just some desperate people, we just need to give them everything. And people break into that, and some of them take advantage of it. Oh, this is how we are, so we just bring us a gift. And so the empowerment procedure doesn't really go through. So we try as much as possible to create reality, to make sure what is it you have. You realize, if you see what Tom was talking, most of the time he will tell you the professors of the forest tap into that knowledge. So he didn't address them local people or what, he kept calling them professors, giving them, because the knowledge they have, what you're tapping from them, they should be aware of that. And so they could teach them, they could teach us, we could teach them. So it's some sort of win-win when we put people on the same level and break those stereotypes. So if you realize, every time he was talking, when it comes back to them, you tell them, when we're talking to this professor of the forest, you say, young kid there, the guy was standing beside, will give you 250 scientific names of trees, then he'll give you local names, just like that. And because he's been working with Tom, he said, what is that tree? Give you the name, give you the scientific name, give you the local name. So some of that, if we document that information and bring it in, it's a marvelous facility which we're trying to develop.
And to kind of build on that, I think that it's important how we talk to students about these experiences and how we frame it for them, because there is, within our culture writ large, I think, a tendency to talk about mission trips, right? Service trips, service learning trips, where American students are going overseas, and the sort of way that a lot of people view those trips, including sometimes the students who are on them, is that they are going and performing a service for that community. And that really leans into a power dynamic that is not part of what we try to create at our site. And it really feeds into the kind of stuff that Kevin just talked about. And so when we're talking about our programs, when we're recruiting for our programs, how we message that and how we talk to the students about what it is they're going to do, I think is really important. This would have been the 4th year practicum students went over. Unfortunately, their trip was scheduled for late March and obviously didn't happen. But we talking to them so that they don't go in with those misconceptions, I think, is really important. And I'm happy to share these as well with Shalom. They can be shared afterwards. But there's even some resources that I've used in the past. There's a European NGO that's put together a really nice pamphlet encouraging young people who are traveling to the developing world to be thoughtful about what kind of social media and photography they post about their trip there, asking them to think about consent, asking them to think about dignity of the people that they're taking photos with. What's your purpose in posting this? So I think there's a lot to be done even before the course is organized, even before the course is recruited for it, to make sure that we're moving forward in the spirit and the philosophy of equality.
Yeah, and that's extended also to the research community that we host, from from both Africa, Europe, and Asia and US is that we have best practices, basically information that goes to them before they come over to give them a sense of how we try to operate. And that's been very successful. I would say that, with respect to students that have participated in these short courses, where I think the greatest impact has been for the students has been that that the experience of working in a local community, but the way it can change their path in academia in different directions, in new directions. So we've seen that with students who've participated in field courses and have come back and decided to go into international development. We also have a wonderful program with the medical school with second-year med students who do practicums, and many of them have come back and gone into international health. And so it's this wellspring of opportunities to show students that and researchers opportunities to expand how they not only view the world, but career-wise, what direction they may take. And we have many examples of this, and that's really one of the most satisfying aspects of these programs. So
one more piece about kind of a new effort that we're trying to advance to bring Indigenous knowledge to the sort of level of respect that scientific knowledge is already given. We submitted an NSF proposal that would bring courses over specifically to conduct research with both local knowledge and with scientific knowledge. So, we're talking about an incredibly complex ecosystem with all sorts of interactions that that scientific knowledge is probably not going to be able to capture, and certainly not in the time frame it needs to, because it's a vastly understudied ecosystem and it's already changing because of climate change. And Indigenous knowledge plays a really important role in just understanding that space. And so this project would seek to train a younger generation of scientists to actually respect and incorporate Indigenous knowledge into their formal scientific practice. And I have no idea if it's going to be funded, because I have no idea if we're going to be successful in convincing the NSF reviewers that Indigenous knowledge should be elevated. But it's really experiences like that we're hoping to kind of push forward through our site.
Yeah, just to amplify on that is that there's a lot of lip service in the ecological community about the importance of Indigenous knowledge and that how we need to leverage it, because we don't have time, given the climate crisis, to understand all the relationships that many of the communities already have sort of basic understanding. And so what we've done is to try to develop this curriculum for this course that will be kind of a starting point, a roadmap for how to do this and how to incorporate Indigenous knowledge. We've been doing it in a sense, I've been doing it with my research for the last 30 years because we've been working in these areas, and all of our communications about the forest, whether it be animals or plants, it's all done in the local language. And that's because we have found that is much more valuable than trying to communicate in vernacular names, for example, in English vernacular names. But the extraordinary thing is the accuracy of if you go out into the forest with a plant systematist, a highly skilled plant taxonomist, they find that the BACA and the plant system, you find that the BACA and the plant systematist will actually agree on what is a species, and they will have an Indigenous name. And now, because we've done this so long, the BACA, we work with the professors of the forest, know all the Latin names. And so, so we have people who've been working with us now that know, 350, 400 species of tree, their Baca name, the Latin name, and they can identify the seeds, the seedlings, and tell you all about the ecological relationships of those plants. So this is knowledge that is just not is non-existent in Western archives. So it's a wonderful aspect of this that we hope that we can build on and make sure that the Baca local communities are benefiting from that. And right now they benefit through being research associates with the center and teachers. And so we're to the point where we have recently, I guess it was last spring, we had a group from another village, another Baca village, come to us and say, we really like what you're doing. Can you expand to these other villages? And so now we have funding to expand this effort to other places. And so, it's wonderful to see that engagement and to be able to build on this.
Shalom, did you want to open it up for questions, or
Yes.
we could keep going?
Yes, I would love to open it up for questions. I find the description of your work fascinating, inspiring, and so many other adjectives I can attach. And as Tom did last winter, and is what I hope, and what you did do this afternoon for us, is in the richness of your description of the Congo Basin Institute work, what I discern here are these underlying principles and values of community engaged research, of community engagement more broadly. And I'd love to open it up and hear how those resonated for the folks on this call, and what questions emerged for you all as you heard Tom and Virginia and Kevin talk about their work.
I just want to say that it was just a beautiful presentation, and it's such an amazing endeavor, collaboration that you have, just so impressive. And I wish that I had known about it sooner, and I'm glad I know about it now. I'm wondering if you do, clearly a lot of teaching and learning happens both ways. And I'm wondering, do you do, and I apologize if I missed this piece, more formal courses, or is everything very projects based?
Yeah, well, to date, it's all been project based. We have our research, and so the exchange happens around a particular scientific question. What Virginia mentioned is this effort now to broaden that in a more formal way, and so that was the genesis of this NSF proposal to develop a curriculum that would involve Baca and US researchers. And when I don't want to exclude Bantu and other groups, we work with all of them, but at least for this first one, it will be mostly Baca knowledge. And we'll see how that goes, but I would love to see that kind of course be taught every year and to be built on. And remember that while we're biologists, there's a cultural richness here that's phenomenal. And so I would love to see anthropologists and people from world arts and culture and dance be engaged in this as well, because there's so much to learn, and we have many wonderful contacts locally that we can connect people to if you're interested in doing a course or getting a research project off the ground. I mean, what Ellen Roberts, who you may know, always talks about from World's Arts and Culture, who was, and by the way, Alan and I were sort of dreamed up this concept for the Congo Basin Institute together back about 10 years ago. But one thing about Cameroon, where we're working, is it's really the hinge of East and West Africa. And it, you know, culturally, it's just incredibly diverse and interesting. And so it's a wonderful place to be, to do these sorts of studies.
If I can just,
Tom, let me just add, we ran a course with the School of Public Health before, Tom, with Hilary Gordon before. So there have been some formal courses which we try to run as part of UCLA curriculum. The students in public health were taking the course at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the students in Cameroon registered for the same course at 4 p.m. So we could run the course. So I was one of the faculties for that course. So we did some lectures here in the US, then I traveled to Cameroon to look at how the system works. The students in UCLA got credit for their course. Then we're trying to get the students in Africa, because we cannot give them UCLA credits for them not to pay tuition in UCLA, so that the courses get incorporated into their curriculum in local universities in Africa. So that's another system which we've been trying to do that. We've done that for 2 years.
And we did, so we recently secured funding to build a distance learning center on our campus in Cameroon, which should have, you know, a lot more technology and a good broadband connection that would allow those kinds of student exchanges between Cameroon and the US outside of travel. I mean, you know, that could be a precursor to travel, right, as an orientation. It could be something like what Kevin taught, where it's a full semester and the value of it is the interaction with people who are living in a very different context than you are. And it can be sort of a recruitment tool to get students to think, oh, maybe this is something that I would be interested in. And so we're kind of excited to see how that develops. And I also, you know, I think the onboarding piece is important. We've, through the years, developed kind of a checklist. There's a lot of health things to walk students through, but also a lot of cultural differences, and trying to make sure that when folks come out to the site that they're that they have a realistic expectation of what it's going to be like and what kind of behavior is appropriate and things like that. So I think the work we do before we leave is also kind of very important. And whenever possible, we do try to introduce Cameroonian and American students well before they travel.
Mm-hmm. That's a kind of a centerpiece of our courses, is that, you know, when we take a course of UCLA students, or from anywhere in the US or Europe, actually, for that matter, we always try to include equal numbers of African students. And so the way this typically happens is that, you know, of course, the students will be doing a joint project. And so we might have 2 Americans and 2 Africans in that course as a team together. And so you get this wonderful, you know, exchange of ideas and cross-cultural exchange. And the student connections have just been extraordinary. They've developed Facebook pages, and, you know, they're still in touch now after 6 years. So I think that, you know, figuring out how you develop your curriculum so there's that kind of engagement is very important. But we should field some more questions for folks. We can talk for hours about this.
So I'm reading through some of the questions. So language differences, yeah, those can be really interesting. I mean, you heard Tom refer very briefly to Baka and Bantu. So, you know, Cameroon is a space with an enormous wealth of cultural diversity, which is probably fascinating from an anthropological view. There are some challenging power dynamics associated with that, particularly around the sites that we work in, where there's kind of more well-to-do agrarian communities, and then indigenous communities that are traditionally hunter-gatherer that tend to have a lower social status, at least locally. And so those people may not even speak the same language. Cameroon is officially English and French bilingual. And so in that sense, I think it's more amenable to American students than any other Central African country, because it does have English as one of the 2 official languages. But it is still a challenge. And so oftentimes we have to select for Cameroonian students to participate whose English is good enough that they'll be able to communicate with their American counterparts.
Yeah.
And then there tends to be some translation work done in the field between the instructors and the Baka professors of the forest. That might be something Tom or Kevin want to talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, one thing we do, for example, we've also taught these courses in Gabon, which is a strictly Francophone country. But what we did there is we actually hired French tutors for the American students before they went, and English tutors for the African students before they arrived. And so they had some facilitation, some facility in the language, even if they hadn't taken French or English. So, and the fact that then you put those teams of 4 people together, typically there'd be, there might be one person with stronger language skills than others, and so it all worked out. And students, were able to, get some language training as part of the course. So it's amazingly seamless. You think it's going to be really problematic, but if you can do a few things on the front end, it really does work out.
Yeah, and even for the American professors, when they're doing their slideshows, they give us we get a preview of what they're trying to present. We can translate the language for them. You have the same slides and you speak in English, but the presentation is in French. So it worked very well in Gabon, because we translated all the slides. The professor still spoke in English with the same slides, but as you're presenting the slides, everything came out in French. So it can, so those things work very well. Tom,
Cheryl, does that answer your question about language?
Yes, and also the students comprise undergraduate and graduate students who often are part of the project.
Yeah, well, typically right now to date, most of the, well, I should say most of the funding we've had is for undergraduate student teaching. But even there, NSF, for example, some of the courses we did there, we had a professional development workshops where we could actually bring in graduate students for those courses. Yeah. Those tended to be more workshops in Yaoundé. But with this new NSF grant, the hope is that, we can develop these field courses for graduate students. And we're excited about that. It's always a little tricky, working with federal agencies, because they don't want to fund Africans. They want to fund US citizens. But we've been able to kind of work around that by working with the program officers at these federal agencies who, there's some creative ways to charge the American students bench fees, and then you use the bench fees to support the Africans. But it's all workable, and that way everybody is on an equal playing field.
Then also for the Anderson School program, that again, it depends on what program you're looking at. The Anderson School program was very interesting because that was part of a government project called RED, where the government was trying to sequester carbon, but the financial feasibility model was very weak. So what we came in as part of an Anderson School project, where the students for their MBA finals used that model to create a robust financial system for the government. So the government submitted that to World Bank, got funding, and the students got their MBA. So it was a win-win for on both sides. So it was kind of a very interesting model for getting our students go into the country, talk to the local stakeholders, get all that data, work with the World Bank, and come back with a robust model for financing a program in the country. So there are so many ways we can get involved in there.
Thank you.
I see another question here that I think, Tom, this would probably be best for you. So it's about what's needed to build up to the quantity and quality of work that we're doing. Is it important to have the support of many people, or a center or institute who can help you apply for funding? And can you talk a bit about how you were able to build that support over time and how it contributes to your work?
Well, I think it's a long game, building these sorts of things. You know, as I said, I started my dissertation work, my PhD work. I went over as a graduate student in 1983 to start working there. And so over time, you build those relationships, and you see the opportunities for building something more than just your own project. And so for many years, it was just, you know, my dissertation work, my postdoc work, you know, focused around basically what I was doing. But you know, you soon see opportunities for other types of research, and that's where the idea for the Congo Basin Institute grew out of. And it was, you know, it was something that I was thinking about 15 years ago, and you do it bit by bit. You know, in the case of Yaoundé and our center there, we got some money to basically establish an apartment that would house researchers. And you know, we'd be helping a researcher one at a time to, you know, because there was the big problem with Central Africa is a lot of people want to work there, but how do you possibly work there? It's so difficult to. And so what we've done over the years is just try to think about how we can simplify that process. How can we help people with logistics to come over? And so that initial apartment was sort of a place where people could come, and it also became over time kind of a melting pot of different researchers who were using that facility. And as a consequence, collaborations grew out of that. And so it just builds, you know, brick by brick. And then 6 years ago, we formalized this into the Congo Basin Institute. But it's been a long game, and you know, it's just, but very, very rewarding. And you know, and now there are other people coming on board to play more of more roles. We're expanding into other countries using the same model. But you know, we can do this, and we should be doing this. And you know, I think big universities like UCLA, sometimes we don't realize what tremendous brand we have. UCLA has an international brand that is phenomenal, and we can use that to our advantage to create these sorts of entities that people see. So right now, for example, we're setting up an official foreign affiliate in Cameroon, which will be essentially a 501c3 in Cameroon that will be a UCLA-run foreign affiliate. And this will be our first foreign affiliate at UCLA. But it's you know, I think this is also a model, is developing that, because then you can deal with the administration, movement of money, and hiring people and things you need to do that way. And so we're still, UCLA is a little bit in a nascent stage of doing this. Other campuses such as Davis and UCSF have more of these than we do. We just have the one, but you know, I think it's a way for us to really begin to internationalize our work in a substantive way that is long-term and lasting.
And maybe Tom, just to, I mean, on the question of funding, you know, if you bring in more people to the collaboration, they can also be working on writing grants. Now they're writing grants for mostly their own work, but it's building a bigger center of gravity,
Right.
To kind of create a there. And then otherwise, we do an enormous amount of grant writing.
We do a lot of grant writing. Obviously, we'd love to have one donor, but you know, I think that, you know, part of it is also we're trying to move away from this idea of single university campuses that are international. So, you know, we didn't want to create a UCLA Africa campus. We wanted to create a campus that all universities could use. So one of our biggest users of CBI is actually the University of Hong Kong, where we have colleagues who have projects, and they're funding, you know, students and postdocs, and bringing other grant money in to to support their programs, all contributing to this hub. And so, as we build out, our facilities improve, we have vehicles people can rent, we have places where people can stay, we have these field stations, we have a huge number of contacts. So if you're interested in doing, a study on X, we can, especially Kevin's very good at this. He knows everybody in Cameroon, and he can set you up with the right person to help you study whatever it is you want to study. And so that's been really fundamental to the success, is just really trying to be, as helpful as you can to people coming in, knowing that, the goal here is to create something that's long lasting, that's not ephemeral, that we're not parachuting in. We're gonna, the idea is to keep CBI there in perpetuity.
Before we wrap up, I think I have a question that might be one of those bridging questions. I love the term professor of the forest, and it speaks to me in a profound way. Those of us working locally, we talk about community scholars. Tria on the call is working with Tongva dancers, who are the keepers of tremendous cultural knowledge. One of the issues that I know that we face is the issue of respect for community scholars, access to the university, how recognition, collaboration. What is it peer collaboration, or is it somehow not peer collaboration? By the standards of people who don't recognize the value of community knowledge. So I'm wondering if we could close out our session with some reflections from you and anybody on the call. But what has enabled your work specifically around this recognition and lifting up of community knowledge, expertise to a level that your work depends upon, actually, but it seems so rare in so many other contexts?
Well, I'll say something first and then we'll move around. But I think that, for me, it was that experience going back to my early days and spending months in the forest with these folks and realizing the tremendous knowledge that they had, and how we could leverage it and share our knowledge with them and their knowledge with us. And it just is a mutual respect for them and their culture. And I might mention the term professor of the forest, that came from the Baka. They said, one day I was out walking with Augustin, I've known for 25 years, and we're talking about setting up these schools, and I said, well, so what do you guys want to call yourself? And he didn't drop a beat. He said, oh, we're professors of the forest. And I said, I like that. So,
and do you write folks into your proposals? And I guess what are the dimensions of the collaboration, moving from informal to formal? Yes, well, we're in that stage right now, I guess, with this NSF grant. So there's funding in there, obviously, for them. We're going to be building this curriculum together. Okay, so in the first year, it's not us developing this curriculum and airdropping it onto Cameroon. It's going to be mutually developing it. And so we'll see how that goes. But I'm very optimistic, because
it's interesting in some of the lectures that we'll hold, with, the BACA will ask questions at scientific seminars. And they will bring up insights that will just absolutely blow you away. That we hadn't even thought of, because we're thinking in a different realm. And I could talk about different examples, but I think that we really need to listen. Very important to listen. And if I have a question, and it's also, you need to understand this, the BACA too is a very egalitarian societies, and so if we have a question we can't really find an answer to, a research question, but we think the BACA will probably have an idea, what I'll do is to pose the question in the evening and say, okay, I'll come back tomorrow and we'll talk about it. And what happens is that the BACA, the professors of the forest, will sit around probably most of the night and talk about it and share their opinions about it. And in the morning, when you talk to them, they have one answer, and it's always right. So anyway, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's again, it's different with each cultural group, but with the BACA, that's the way it happens. Yeah.
And I think building off of Tom's idea of listening, when I conceptualize it, it has a lot to do with honoring their participation, both with our value system and with their value system, right? So it's important to honor it with our value system, because that's how we demonstrate to ourselves and to the people in our community that they should be honored and valued, but in their value system, because that's what they care about. So in the specific, in kind of our specific case, things like when we wrote that NSF proposal, the first time we wrote it, the summary had Western ecological knowledge first and then Indigenous knowledge second. And in a subsequent draft, we flipped those. So we were like, let's talk about that first. Folks, BACA get credited in publications, right? The currency of the academic world. So showing value in showing their importance in our value system is important, but the School for Indigenous Knowledge, that grew out of them coming to Tom and saying, we're really worried that our culture and our knowledge is being lost, because there's a lot of very complex social forces that are that they're facing, right? Sedentarization, modernization, all this kind of stuff. And what was important to them was to see their knowledge handed down. And so we modified the way we worked with them to try to facilitate that transition. We built out an entire program, including seeking funding, so we could help them do that. And then, with this new NSF grant, there are American students and there are BACA students. And then there are American instructors and there are BACA instructors. And, if we had only been honoring our value system, then we might have only had BACA instructors and ignored the youth component. But in their value system, it's really important for those youth to be involved. And so I think making sure, and it obviously takes a bit more work to do that in two value systems. And as Tom said, to listen so you understand the other value system. But I think that's the key to the way we do it.
That's a great place to wrap up, actually, Virginia. That was a wonderful summation of the values and principles. And I want to thank Tom and Virginia and Kevin for sharing this time with us. I want to thank the people who made it to the end. But I know that we had some other really interested people on the call, and I think that having this recording will make it possible to share more of your amazing work with our colleagues at UCLA. So thank you for being part of our workshop series and for being such wonderful presenters. And let's look forward to not only collaboration, but exploration of translating LA work into African context and translating African context work into LA context. I really do think there's a lot to learn and to involve more faculty and students who are doing local work, not just in the environmental space, but in so many other urban issues and the like, and beginning a fruitful dialogue across these contexts. So thank you so much for this.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's been wonderful meeting you all today, and I hope that we stay in touch. And if you want to come to Cameroon, just drop us an email.
I do. Thank you.
I think we're all ready, Tom.
Yes.
Let
Okay.
us just get out of our apartments first.
Yeah, I have to get out of my house in Topanga, where I've been since March.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, take
Thanks.
care, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.